Welcome to the Sports Entrepreneur Show powered by the Ninja Zone, the only podcast for sports entrepreneurs that gives you an inside look into what it takes to turn your passion for sports into a business.
Hello everyone, I'm Scott Rudisell and welcome to the Sports Entrepreneur featuring Casey Wright and powered by the Ninja Zone. Our weekly dose of inspiration comes from your host Casey Wright's own Instagram page, and you can follow her on Instagram at CaseyWrightNZ. This week's quote, Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said, "There are 3 constants in life: change, choice, and principles." On today's episode, Casey sits down with Lisa Mitzel. A Southern California girl, Lisa is an author, speaker, mental training coach, and educator who has written 2 books so far, and pay close attention to these titles. Focused and Inspired, Keeping Our Athletes Safe in a Win-at-All-Costs World, and Focused and On Fire, The Athlete's Guide to Mental Training and Kicking Butt. Lisa knows what she's talking about. She was a 2-time junior Olympic national champion in gymnastics at age 15, an NCAA 6-time All-American, NCAA National Champion on floor, and was a member of 4 consecutive NCAA National Championship Teams at the University of Utah. She coached at the University of Stanford and has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in writing, and is published in Routledge Handbook of Applied Sport Psychology. Most importantly, she is also a mom to 3 children. So her and Casey have a lot in common and a lot to talk about. Enjoy the show, and I'll be back at the end to recap and let you know how to find out everything you need to know about Lisa and the sports entrepreneur. Here's Casey Wright with Lisa Mitzel.
Hello, sports entrepreneurs. Casey here. I have an exciting guest today, Lisa Mitzel. Lisa is doing some amazing work with athletes, and I am ready to just jump right in with her. And I will let her tell you a little bit about what she does for children in sports, which obviously is something that's very close to my heart and the hearts of many of you guys. So Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Casey. I'm so excited to be here and add to all the wonderful people that you've already had on your show. I listened to a couple of your interviews, and you just have a lot of great stuff going on here on the Sports Entrepreneur.
Thank you. We're having fun with it. If you could tell our listeners a little bit about what are you doing right now? Like what's lighting you up at the moment?
Great question. It's funny that you asked that because inspiration, what's inspiring me, what's charging my engine and getting me going is one of the things that I talk about in terms of connecting with athletes, connecting with parents, connecting with coaches. So in my work, it is really about human connection and what is the impact that we can have in terms of really lifting up these young athletes in a way that is enhancing their desires, their dreams. And what I've been doing recently more of is working with parent and athlete pairs. And I'm super excited about this because it sort of just happened organically. Often if you go to a clinic, sports clinic, it's either just for the coaches or just for the athletes, or they might have a parent talk. And parent education, I do that as well. But very rarely, and sometimes you might have coaches and athletes together, but very rarely do you see organized sessions with the parent and the athlete as a pair. Okay. And so I'm really excited about this because this is where all the education starts. It starts at home. And I think in order for us as an entire culture that within the sports community, we really need to get to the root of how are we treating these athletes and helping them to develop as whole human beings. And it really starts at home. So this is kind of a new thing that I've been doing with especially very young athletes. So I'm working with 7, 8, 9, 11-year-olds, primarily in my sport of gymnastics, but I also work with athletes in other sports as well. And when they're that young, they're so cute, of course, but, they just need a little help from mom or dad, writing some notes down or understanding what they're reading and different things like that, but they are fully engaged. And then I actually give them exercises, and I give the parent exercises. And then I give them exercises together, how to breathe together, how to feel calm together. And it's really kind of transformative. I mean, these parents are like, wow, I really noticed that I've been so tense. I noticed that I'm talking too much to her. I noticed that I need to slow down. And they truly affect their child. So
That's I love it. I'm in every piece of the people that you're working with in the industry. I have young children, 6 and 8 that are solely mine, and then bonus 11 and 13 kids. But it's just really top of mind for me, and the whole awareness piece is huge. I actually read a book called The Awakened Family that turned me on to exactly what you're speaking of, and how the way we are with them, we have to be very okay with them exactly the way they are.
I know.
And
I have the book.
yeah, oh my gosh. And I didn't explain it well at all, but when I listened to your explanation, I was like, oh, that book really, it changed my family and my presence.
Wow.
And being the anecdote and not the fuel to the fire, like it's wonderful. And you spoke about the parent-child pair. I was a coach for many years, many more years as a coach than I was as an athlete. My parents were both coaches also. Mm-hmm. And my dad used to speak about he called it the parent, athlete, coach triad, right? So when you started team, he would draw a triangle on the board and talk about these equal distances. And I know as a coach, I would have benefited from mental training, from my own awareness. And I could have been a much better coach for the whole child had I had some of that training. So when you work with the parent and the athlete, like how does that play in if you have a coach that's, not totally on board? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's funny. I just got The Awakened Family probably a month ago. And, And I like any of the books that especially relate to, family and children and all these things that maybe Oprah might also be talking about, but spirituality and all those things kind of lead into this, and being very conscious of how we are in the world. And so the parent, athlete, coach triad, I have sort of a model of that also in my second book, Focused and Inspired. And that book is for coaches and parents. And I totally get what you're saying just now about when the coach is not on board. Because all coaches are on their own journey and they're learning, and they mostly default to what they learned when they were younger, and their role models. There's certain situations where a coach is what I call kind of like the ruler, and they're definitely of the thought and mindset that they need to be in control of everything. And so if that's the case, then typically the parent, and especially the athlete, they do not want their coach to know that they're working with me. And I've had a number of those situations, and I completely honor that. I think that one of the greatest obstacles for any young person, and especially an athlete, to be able to advance is that fear, that feeling of that they are going to get in trouble, that they're not good enough, that they're being judged. All these fears are very normal. And if I'm going to help them at all, and I'm going to be able to teach them to be aware of their thoughts and feelings and manage them, and then be able to advance, then they need to be able to reduce all that tension and fear. And so then we sort of just place the coach in another category. Now, most coaches are kind of in the middle about all the mental training. And then there's a certain percentage that are fully on board. They're more in the pool of you and I, wanting to really, do this whole human being development, whole person approach. So, they're all over the place. But what I do with the parents, the parent and the athlete, is to really get to know their values, what's important to them, what's the family like, the family dynamic. And if the coach in any way could be helpful, then I will suggest for them to communicate with the coach. And I give them some tips and some suggestions of how to approach them, make it a neutral setting. So, because usually, as you probably know, in a coaching situation or in the sports environment, you're on the field, you're on the court, you're in the gym, and that's the that's the coach's home, so to speak. I mean, that's where they're the boss, right? And so they need to move out of that environment. And if they go to an office, let the athlete sit behind the desk, switch it up and let them feel like, ooh, I'm big stuff here. But I would say try to be in a neutral situation where everybody feels as equal as possible, because the athlete is always going to feel intimidated in those situations. Right. And often the parent does too, sometimes, depending on the personalities in the room, right. The parent and the athlete can feel like they're walking on eggshells.
For sure.
Yeah,
I know that I have made people feel that way in the past, and it's something that I've had to grow through. Listening to what you're saying about this and about how that communication pattern works with all three. When I transitioned out of the gym into just really to focus on the business and then the leadership of the entire company, I think the leadership, the owner. And that's where, this is the sports entrepreneur. The owner has they have so much power over the culture of the company and in setting those clear expectations when the parents walk in the door. So even in your recreational programming, communicating early and often what your club is about and what you're really after, and that whole child model of being there for the life skills, and that sports are just a modality to build the bigger picture. And I think that a lot of times, if the coach is the owner, that's where things just really get a little bit lost, because people gravitate towards what is celebrated. So a lot of times that's winning, and that I would love to somehow be a part of changing that the level of consciousness from the leadership perspective to really say, hey, why are we really here? Because it took me a long time. I really thought my job was to teach flips and twists. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized that it was, I was building confidence, and I was building discipline and grit and the muscles for life. And I think that there's still a lot of people out there that don't realize that, and that their identity is wrapped up in the sport itself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Even if the coach is not the owner of the business, which as you were referring to, carries not only a lot of responsibility, but even liability. And so they're definitely, can be very stringent and very strict about how they run things, and not wanting to hear, any feedback or disagreement from the parents and whatnot, because they're going to run things as a business and this is the way they do it. But so even if the coach is not the owner, there's egos involved. And that's how we all are as people, is that we want to feel good about ourselves, and we don't want to feel judged and all those things. But the whole human being thing is one kind of almost fuzzy, warm thing that people in sports don't necessarily relate to all the time. And I know that I have had my own growth with that. But truly, what I have experienced myself as an athlete, I've experienced as a coach, and I've experienced as a gymnastics coach, and then also as a mental training coach, this incredible transformation from addressing, the young individual, the young athlete, as someone who is intelligent about themselves, whose thoughts and feelings not only matter, but they are so real and important in order for them to actually even go into their, practices and be able to stand up tall, feel good about themselves, and perform. They focus better. They can speak up for themselves with their coach to not necessarily negotiate, but just work together as partners. They will be much more efficient, more consistent, more confident. Their performance just soars when we really do address them as a person first and really connect with them in an authentic way, caring about who they are, how they feel, and what they want. And that's the most amazing thing, is that they become a different performer,
Right.
Yeah.
I like when you were speaking of that, I always think of the Disney movie Inside Out.
Oh.
Have you seen this movie?
I know what you're talking about. I did not see it, but I know of it.
So it's definitely worth a watch. I think that it would probably give you goosebumps because it's basically about this child that has roles, right? And these feelings that are the different characters, right? You've got anger and you've got this, and then you have these islands where they have experiences. But even with my children, we talk about how, like, Scarlett, you're perfect. Scarlett is perfect. Scarlett, the student, isn't always perfect. And Scarlett, the sister isn't always perfect and has growth to do. But basically looking at they're separating their identity from their roles. And just like what you said, treating the child first, the person first. And I think all around, even with the coaches as well, I know that my identity was wrapped up into being a coach. I didn't give myself the care and the love that I needed because that identity was being a coach, if that makes sense. So when you spoke about speaking to the child first as the child, and then the sport being the thing that they do, I think it's huge. I think it's huge because when they mix those things and their identity becomes what they do, then when something goes wrong or they get hurt, or, heaven forbid, they have an injury, they feel like they've lost themselves. I just love what you're doing. I really do.
Thank you.
Well, for your, I know that you've written 2 books. Talk about those a bit, and then the differences and the solutions we can find in those books.
Yeah, great. So I had worked with, when I was 15, I had worked with a mental training coach. It was a sports psychologist. He's one of the founding fathers, so to speak, of sports psychology in America. And his name is Dr. Ken Ravizza. There were definitely, and there's big names, people that came before him, but he was a pioneer in many ways. This was 1979 when really nobody knew what sports psychology was. So he's one of the main reasons. My experience with him is one of the main reasons for the first book. I had a crash in the gym. I was doing a double back and I got lost in the air, which, if people don't naturally know this, when you're flipping and twisting in the air, sometimes you're not sure where you are. Am I in the first flip, the second flip? Have I finished the full, the twist? Where's the ground? And so I got lost in the air and I opened up my rotation and landed on my head and got knocked out. So I developed fear. So the first book is on all the mental skills, and it's primarily for athletes. It's called Focused and on Fire: The Athlete's Guide to Mental Training and Kicking Butt. And you don't have to have a great fear. In fact, this is one of the misperceptions about sports psychology and mental training. A lot of people think you only need to use it if you have some great fear or problem. And that's not it. That's one of the things. But mental training and sports psychology, it's to enhance your ability to focus and to manage distractions, ways to build your confidence, how you can visualize and imagine the things that you want to do. Because often we'll race through our mind about an event that's coming up, and we'll only imagine failure, crashing, missing, making a mistake, going slowly instead of fast in a race, mishaps, things that are going to go wrong. And so that's a skill, learning how to visualize vividly, accurately, and feel like you are consistent and confident. Yeah. And so that's one of the chapters. And the whole thing about mental training is that it really does put us in tune with ourselves. And what I say is that, our ability to see is fabulous. We can see a sunset. We can watch sports. We can see the face of the people we love. We see so many things in our world, yet it can be a distraction when we're trying to perform. And we see the score, we see the audience, we see the officials. And in order to really come all the way into your own self, your own body, and being in tune with what you want to do in your performance, you need to be able to push out the distraction and go inward. And what do you want to focus on? And it's what you say to yourself, the positive self-talk. People think, oh, be positive. Well, it's not that easy. And people say, well, relax. Okay, well, how do I relax?
How? Exactly.
Yeah. So getting calm, mastering inner calm and concentration is one of the chapters. And I also talk about personal values, inner strength, and gratitude. And that's another chapter. And when we come from a place of gratitude, really being thankful for these awesome shoes that I get to run in, really being thankful that my parents have the money to take me, to sign me up, and I get to play this season, all these things, if we really do at least experience gratitude on a regular basis, then we're not in a place of lacking and needing. Just a lot of things, but mostly the mental skills are breathing, relaxing, positive self-talk, recall, which is remembering, and visualizing. And to me, the difference, they're very similar because it's both kind of, seeing in your mind. But recall is to recall a good performance, because you don't really want to recall a bad performance.
So I want to speak to that just a little bit, because this just came up just yesterday in the company. We use a Slack for communication, and we have a wins channel. And it's something we start every meeting with a win, just to get people in the right frame of mind, but more so that it really works in that recall. And we've been really intentional about not just saying good job or awesome or whatever, this person is great. It's so-and-so did this. Yeah. How did you do it? Yeah. How did you do it? And I think especially with the whole notion of, at least in junior Olympic gymnastics, when you start at a 10 and work backwards, it's of the mindset that you're constantly trying to fix something. And we don't spend enough time saying, how did we do it right? Because if you can just focus on what's working for more of the time, you're going to, even if it's what's working in all the athletes. I know that I always loved working with bigger groups of kids and people, because I felt like I had more strengths to learn from and to share. Whereas other coaches and a lot of times the parents wanted more of a one-on-one instruction, where I'm like, no, you guys, like it gets better. They learn from each other more than they learn from me. Right. And by just pulling those strengths out. So I love that recall. It was like, why did it work? How did it work? And how can we apply that elsewhere? So that's wonderful.
I'm glad you're breaking that down, because in visualizing, whether you are recalling something that went well or you're imagining something in the future that you want to go well, I break it down, and this is especially for the athletes, but it can be in business, it can be in anything in life. It could be in a conversation that you're going to have with somebody and that you're nervous about. But I talk and teach about breaking things down into parts and going in slow motion. And this is where I haven't done a lot of reading where I have, at least where I found that other sports psychologists and mental training coaches do this. So I'm not sure how different I am, but it seems that I'm different this way. So I just highly emphasize slow motion. And for instance, for a simple handstand, or it could be for somebody pitching a ball or a golfer, hitting the ball, is that you break down from the beginning to the end of that movement or skill. You break it down into 4, 5, or 6 positions, and you hold each position for 2 counts. And you notice what you see. What are you looking at? If you're a golfer, do you see your hands? Do you see the ball? Which way are you looking? What do you see out of your eyes? And what you feel in your body. Are my elbows straight? Are my fingers clenched? Is my chin up? Am I bent over? So you notice the exact position of your body, your hands, your feet, your knees, everything. And it becomes like a little picture, like camera, little brain picture. And then that becomes a map for you mentally. So it's from each position in slow motion, and then you close your eyes and you recall that and you repeat it. And you do these mental repetitions in slow motion. And it's sort of like the Asian practice, what is it, like Tai Chi, and they move in slow motion.
Yep.
And the exact path of your hands moving across, from left to right and slowly stepping forward. And that actually allows the athlete to not only feel extremely connected to the technique and the accuracy, but also that they are in control. Yes. And 2 of the things that athletes always tell me is they want to feel more confident and they want to feel in control. And so that allows them then to be much more in tune with themselves, to understand what they're going to do physically, and then to be able to do it. So the visualizing to me, and it's reported. You've probably read In Pursuit of Excellence. There's so many great sports psychology training books, but they're usually all geared towards an adult audience. So that's why my book, Focused and on Fire, is geared for a younger audience. I kind of straddled it where I wanted it to be intellectual enough for coaches and parents, but also fun and playful enough for younger athletes. So there's over 100 cartoon illustrations, which I did. And I just get lots of wonderful feedback from both athletes and adults on that.
How fun.
Yeah.
Well, so, okay, I want to ask one more question, and maybe you haven't dabbled in this at all, but it's something that if I were to go back in the gym, I would use it. We do a lot of personality testing at Ninja Zone, and I've done a lot of different personality testing, just trying to figure out my strengths and who I am, and communication and how people process information. And in order to really build the best team, it's just been amazing for our company, because we're just much more aligned because we can understand each other. And I know with children, they're still, building their programming, but they do have that spiritual DNA with, their personality type. And I could just see something, when you're talking about getting back to the kid and who they are, is that anything you've ever thought about or used? Like, what kind of kid is this? How do they go about life? What's in there? Because we all know that they're very different. And just wondered if you'd ever worked with that, and especially working with so many kids. I'm sure you can probably kind of put them into categories a little bit.
Yes. Well, my undergraduate degree is in psychology, and I went back to school and got an MFA in writing. And as funny as it might sound, I learned more about personalities, personal history, all kinds of mannerisms, behaviors, and everything when I was in this writing program. It was a graduate program and very strict. So, and then of course I've taken, you may or may not have experienced this with your kids, but for 6 years I was in a co-op, a preschool co-op, and for three nights a month for 6 years, I was in parent education classes on child development and how to notice the issues with every kind of child and personality, and how we can teach them and nurture them and everything. Often, I will just say, my second book is focused and inspired, keeping our athletes safe in a win-at-all-cost world. And so the subtitle really does kind of like target safety. And the first chapter is primarily on identifying verbal and emotional abuse, and especially in the sports environment. But the whole rest of the book is on all the positive psychology of training and working with athletes as a coach and as a parent, and how we can nurture them. And often what we do is we look at the child, we look at the athlete, and we say, well, what kind of personality are you, and why aren't you motivated, and what is your desire? And so that's half of it. The other half is our personality and our desire, and how do I want to share, myself and my wisdom? How do I want to do it? And instead, I think in our culture is that it can even be condescending in a way when we look at a child and we're thinking, well, they are not motivated. They don't have a good attitude. And really it's okay. So that means that you need to have more strategies as a coach and a parent. And so when you're talking about personalities, that's definitely important. And I would say that, it's across the board. There's all kinds of personalities in sports. You've got the shy kids, you've got the bold kids, you've got the brave ones who maybe even are quiet. And then you've got the scared to death ones who joke. And that's their defense mechanism, is joking. So, but usually what I look for is what's going on behind all that. What's going on, in their conversations with their mom, what's going on with their brothers and sisters at home. Are they a good student, and do they like themselves, and so there's a lot of things that I kind of go deeper. But, here we are at practice. We're here, everybody line up. Okay, let's check in. How are you today? We're going to have a hard practice. We want to, make some improvements. And, but it's getting together, at least investing a few minutes on a regular basis. And I would say at least once a week. If you're having these kids come in 2 or 3 times a week or more, and just spending 5 minutes of, taking a breath together, smiling, and allowing that connection so that they can open up, they can trust you, that you care. So no matter what their personality is, it is really providing the space to have that connection. And I'm here for you. What are your goals? And finding out what they want. Let their desire guide you. Because whether they are a character, and they're funny or they're talkative, or whether they're quiet, it really is connecting with them. And that's the most important thing. And so that's what my second book really kind of aims at, is how do we connect with them? How do we nurture their spirit, build their confidence, their self-esteem? Because that is when they can overcome the challenges. That's when they'll open up and talk to you. That is when they will actually really advance and make progress.
Well, that's wonderful. I commend you for what you're doing. And I hope that your message can reach more people, more athletes, more coaches, more parents. You mentioned that 1979 sports psychology was brand new. And I think sometimes we go about life and we don't realize that it's time for, like, the times are changing and we need to embrace that. Because if you think, I mean, now it's like, oh, sports psychology. Well, it hasn't even been around that long.
Mm-hmm.
So we're ready for the next level.
Yeah.
We're ready to evolve into, just improving how we do things and how we deal with children and coaching as well. So I'm just super happy to have you on the show, Lisa, and tell everybody where they can find you online or your books, and we'll wrap it up.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm just delighted. I'm smiling. I'm really happy to talk with you too. And anything that the sports entrepreneur is doing in terms of spreading, models for coaches and business owners in sports and different people, I'm on board. So you can find me, my name is Lisa Mitzel, and that's Mitzel. So lisamitzel.com. And that's my website. And it has my books and mental training, clinics and speaking. I travel all over the country and beyond. And then you can also connect with me on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lisa. We'll talk soon for sure.
Awesome.
I think we're going to cross paths again.
I would love that.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, we really hope you enjoyed Casey's talk with Lisa. That was a lot of great stuff there. And you can find out everything you need to know about Lisa by going to her website, lisamitzel.com. You can also check out her blog at HeyMitz, that's HeyMitz.com, and find her on Instagram at Mitzel_coach, and on Facebook as well. Make sure to check out her 2 books and watch for her 3rd coming soon. All right, that's it from us. We really hope you are enjoying the Sports Entrepreneur Podcast. Each week we try and give you helpful information about business that you can apply as you grow in and within your own company, no matter your position or industry even. If you have any comments or feedback, please share them by commenting on our website, thesportsentrepreneur.com, or by emailing us at podcast@theninjazone.com. On our website, you can also sign up to receive all the latest news and bonus content, as well as be notified every time a new episode of The Sports Entrepreneur comes out, which is every Thursday usually. You can sign up on our website or email us at podcast@theninjazone.com. Like what you hear? Leave us a review on iTunes, like our page, The Sports Entrepreneur, on Facebook, and share the love by sharing our podcast on social media, and help us help others by spreading the word. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.